built on the cliffs overlooking the river valley Kourion lies one of the most important cities of antiquities on the island of Cyprus, and that's Kourion. Now, what made this city so great? Well, it starts with 3 words: location, location, location. Who wouldn't want to live in a city with a view like this? It's amazing. Now, they've never actually found the original city of Kourion. The dating for it comes from historian sources and writings, as well as the royal tombs that they found built into the cliffsides below. So it seems to date and have been founded around the year 1050, which lands at around the time of King David. Now, throughout its existence, it was about competition, struggle for dominance of the island. Who was going to rule the island? And from the Assyrian time period, it had set itself up as one of the most influential city-states. And it took a lead in instigating and participating in the civil wars of this island, attacking Salamis, for example, during the Ionian Revolt. Now, this history of competition is well preserved within the Roman ruins of the city of Kourion. So let's go in and take a look. So in the Greek and Roman time periods, the first building that you would approach when coming to Kourion was this one. They call it the House of Achilles today. Now this had a special design to it. It was outside the city walls at the Paphos Gate, and the purpose was kind of a meet and greet for all the dignitaries and prominent individuals who were visiting the cities. This was like your tourist information center. Now, today they call it the House of Achilles because it was a beautifully adorned building, right? This is for rich people. And the floor mosaics throughout were all depicting scenes from the life of Achilles. Now, Achilles, of course, that legendary figure from Greek mythology, the valiant warrior. This is who everybody wanted. Hero worship and the worship of people was very big in Kourion. It was all about the individual and prominence. So it was special attention was given to those with prominence, and the aspiration of everyone was to become someone of prominence. They even had from Kourion, the city sent a special delegation to Rome, to the Temple of Caesar, to represent the city in giving devotion and worship to a man. And so this kind of shows you how much the focus on the individual was in the city, because this is the first greeting you would get from any visitor to the city. Trying to enter the building and being told, wait, who are you? I see how you're dressed. No, this isn't for you. This is, you've got to be up here to enter the building. So just go into the gate, sir. So this is the culture that developed in Kourion through the years. Focus on prominence. So the spirit of competition can be seen throughout the crown jewels of architecture of the ancient Kourion. Now, one of them was a 187-meter long racetrack for runners that would be competing and training to head off to the international games. This was a 6,000-seat stadium. All sorts of events would be here. Everyone trying to get to the top of the podium to head off to Athens and other places of these international games. And then to entertain themselves, you have the amphitheater. The amphitheater, I mean, look at the view. Look at the view of this place. But they were watching what? They were watching comedies and dramas, Greek and Roman style, right? But these were based off the mythos, you could say, the legends, the legendary figures, guys like Achilles. His life story would be acted upon the stage. It was the glorification of the people, right? Now, there was another type of theater that happened here that they learned about and discovered as they were uncovering all the artifacts from here. And that was one of the great refined theaters, wrestling. Wrestling and gladiatorial type events. Competitions were staged down here for everyone to watch. Now, how do they know that this was part of the entertainment, the lifestyle of the city, wrestling and gladiator events? Well, that's from one of the other jewels of the city, one of the big buildings that would greet you upon entry to Kourion. Let's go check it out. So near Paphos Gate, on the other side was the House of Achilles. You'd come into the city on the main road, and they found this massive building, and they thought initially private residence, someone very well-to-do, like a governor's palace or something like that. But then they started noticing in the excavations that there was a lot of living quarters, but they were all so small. This didn't seem to match what they know of the prominent individuals from the time period of like 3rd to 4th century CE. So as they continued excavating, they found a large opening area, and on the flooring they find these mosaics of gladiatorial scenes. They realized this wasn't a private residence. This was a campus. It was a school for gladiators. So kids coming in, doing tryouts, wanting to go to GU, Gladiator University, they would stay on site. They would train here. You had the amphitheater, you had the stadium as well that they could go to, and it was a training grounds for that competitive spirit and competing, and hopefully, the aspiration to head off one day somewhere big, make a big name for yourself as a gladiator. So we can only imagine what it would be like to be one of the applicants trying to get in at the Kourion University of Gladiatorial Studies, and what that interview process must have been like to try and get a tuition to this place. Yeah, welcome to the Kourion University for Gladiatorial Studies. I am Sven, your instructor. Or you would like me to be your instructor? That's right, I am the Sven from Germania, who won the world Olympic titles in wrestling from 253 to 259. That is me. However, everyone wants to go to the school, yeah? Very difficult, very difficult. So, I was impressed with your trials, but there's more to being a gladiator than just this. I need to know your name and what you will bring to the school, yeah? So, we'll start with you. What do you go by? Shalom. They call me Mishnah Man with the Tanakh attack.
I'm Fremina. Sorry. I'm Fremina Brevis with the Morsis Torso.
No, Fräulein. This is a school for the men, yeah? You can go in the kitchen. We don't have ankle biting in this school. This is for the macho men.
They never let girls have any fun.
Behold, it is I, Pythagoras, with the hypotenuse triangle of pain. Okay. Hello, my friend. I am the halloumi conqueror with the cheese face. Next, you there, what's your story? They call me Zeus Almighty, with my move, the Thunderbolt Cobra. I'd show you my move, but I don't want to hurt you. Yeah, that is good. Swell! I can't wait to start the class. Okay, I think I've heard enough. The trials are closed. And I apologize for my terrible German accent. You see, in this time period, we haven't really developed the German accent yet. How about that? So the spirit of competition typically ends when facing off with the forces of nature. Any of the sailors that worked out of this city would have known that when they had to face down one of the many storms that hit off this coast. There's no way you're going to beat it. You're just going to try and ride it out. That's the best you can hope for. So one of the things that this city used to help them were the mythological gods and goddesses, invoking them, and we see that here at one of the largest nymphaeums in the Mediterranean. It was found here at Kourion. Now, what's a nymphaeum? Well, it's a public waterworks system dedicated to nymphs. Nymphs were oracles. They viewed them as foretellers of the future, that they could go to them. They were typically associated closely with Apollo. And so these ones would come, give offerings to the water nymphs in hopes of seeing what was happening ahead. And as much as this was a massive part of the city, and you would think that if these things were real, they would give some insight into the future. But yet, what happened next for this city was something that nobody saw, even the oracles. And it caught them off guard and devastated the city to where it lies in ruins today. Around the year 360, Kourion was delivered a real dose of humility and perspective on their power when the city was hit by 5 major earthquakes within a span of 80 years. The result was devastation. The city was nearly wiped off the map. This house, they call it the earthquake house because it was owned by lower class people, just your common working guy. And after the earthquakes hit, they just abandoned this part of the city. The lower class part of the city was just abandoned, never rebuilt. So the result is it was perfect for archaeologists to come in and see a snapshot of what happened when the earthquakes hit. So what did they find here? Well, they found a donkey still tied to the rails that had died beside his trough. But beside the donkey, having fallen from the second floor, was a 12-year-old girl. They found huddled together in an embrace a young couple, about 25 years old, as the building collapsed in on them. In the corner, a 55-year-old man seeking shelter. Didn't make it. Whether trying to run into the home for safety or out of the home to escape the collapse, a young family with an infant child. It was heartbreaking for the archaeologists to find it. It really helps with the understanding that when it matters most, at these times when the whole world's collapsing in, what does it matter who's greatest? Who cares who's the strongest and who's the best? So it's during those times that people tend to look for a stronger power than just the power of man and the power of competition, as something bigger, something more powerful that can go past the ruins and destructions when the whole system collapses. So let's take you over to one of the other homes. So in Kourion is a massive villa and spa complex. Now it seemed to be repurposed just after the time of all the earthquakes. So you now have a public spa open to everyone because an inscription says, enter for the good luck of the house. So everyone was welcome to come in. There was a colidarium, tepidarium, frigidarium, different pools to relax and enjoy yourselves in. And in addition to this, they found the villa had about 30 residences built into it and communal cooking areas. So it's public housing. Some wealthy landowner converted his private business into public housing to benefit the community. Who would do something like this? Well, we have a name actually, because possibly after he died, they worked into the tile mosaics his name so that everyone would remember. Stuliosus was his name. This was his house, this was his villa, this was the work that he did. And why would he do these things? What was his motivation for helping people? Well, again, a wonderful inscription that he had made as to the purpose of the house. So here on the inscriptions, it says that this house is fortified with the much venerated signs of Christ. So, he was a Christian. He was a Christian. And, that idea of the house is strengthened by belief in Christ. It's fortified by Christ. In a city that had just been devastated and collapsed by earthquakes, the idea of safety, security, fortification within a building is a heartwarming thought. And this is when we see the Cypriots in the Bible, this is the pattern that we see. These ones that, despite having an area of materialism and all this financial goods and a very luxurious lifestyle, they had an open hand when it came to giving and generosity. They were always giving. They were doing what they could to help their friends and their brothers. And there's another nice example of someone like this in the scriptures, and that's John Mark. So John Mark, was he a Cypriot? We don't know for sure, but his cousin Barnabas was a Cypriot. His name is a Greco-Roman name, Marcus. So very likely he's at least a half-Cypriot. And, while he was an early disciple of Jesus, we just see this character and his attitude, this wonderful lovingness about Mark as we go through his record in the Bible. We see he's always there to help people. His home was his mom's home. He lived with his mom. But their home, the door was always open for the congregation. It seems to be where the congregation met in the early days in Jerusalem. They met at the house of Mark. Whenever the disciples, the apostles were in trouble, where did they go? They ran to Mark's house to be safe. That door was always open, always ready to help. And that's what we see with Mark. Paul and Barnabas, they come to Jerusalem from Antioch to distribute aid to the brothers in need. Who do they stay with? Who do they work with? Quite possibly Mark, because Mark is tied with Paul and Barnabas right after that. So very likely in Jerusalem, they're working alongside Mark. And Mark joins them. Why is Mark going to Antioch with them? Well, he sees a need to assist them. He assists them with very likely the daily needs and physical needs that they require. That's what he's doing. He's an assistant. He's assisting them in their work so that they can be freed up to preach. And this is how Mark was, never seeking grandeur for himself. When Paul and Barnabas get the assignment to head off on a missionary tour and to go to Cyprus, Mark joins them. You know, how much work that must have been. Mark trying to maybe remember if this was a home away from home, remember where all the spots are to get everything that they need, guide them around the country, show them around a bit, help them out. And when they get to Paphos and ready to sail off to Asia Minor, Mark's kind of like, sorry guys, I got a jet. I didn't think we'd be out this long. I have stuff to do. And then you can only imagine how Mark felt, how much his heart must have broken to find out that his decision to go back to Jerusalem and leave Paul and Barnabas caused a fight, a massive fight. When Barnabas was like, okay, round 2, let's go back to Cyprus, wonderful, I'll bring Mark. And Paul goes, no, he ditched out on us. That must have broken Mark's heart, not because of the idea of like, hey, I didn't abandon you guys, I have responsibilities to care for. He was an elder in the congregation in Jerusalem, likely, right? But no, it was likely broke his heart because he caused a fight between 2 close friends, his actions. You got to imagine as he joined Barnabas, that he was eager to join Barnabas through Cyprus a second time. How much of that time was about how do we make the peace again? Not taking for granted, saying, Paul's a spiritual guy. He'll get over it. He'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it'll work out. He must have looked for ways to mend that fence between the 2 of them and to work with Paul in the future. Because that's where we see him. As we read through Mark's life, he's helping people. He's with Peter in Babylon, and Peter's like, my boy Mark. That's my boy Mark, always helping out, and he says hello. And then he's over helping Paul. He does work with Paul. Paul actually asks for him. He says, you know what, bring me Mark. Mark's useful. Now that I've had some time without Mark, I realize how big of a help he is. I could use some Mark in my life. So Mark was running around the world helping his brothers, being an assistant, never wanting the limelight, never wanting the glory for himself. And, in doing so, he ends up writing a gospel with his name on it, something he likely didn't plan. But how much the apostles and the brothers must have looked at him and go, if that guy was in the upper room, he would have been the one to wash Jesus' feet, because this was him. So, we think about Mark going through Cyprus, teaching, preaching alongside Barnabas and alongside Paul. You got to imagine any studies he had here, any interested persons. What are the qualities they're learning from him? When they get to a city like Kourion, it was steeped in competition and power, and who was greatest? Just the breath of fresh air that Mark would have provided of the contentment and joy you can have when you're not worried about competition, when you're just trying to help your brothers. Those are lessons that Mark would have definitely taught any studies and interested ones he had here in the city of Kourion. What did I call it before? The Kourion School for Gladiator Studies? Gladiatorial Studies. The Kourion University. That's right. The Sven who won the 2009. the
253rd.
Who won the gladiatorial gold medal from the years 254 to 259, yeah? Sven?
Sure.
Or Phil? No, Phil won't work. It's forcing it, Sven. Alright. And from here, or? Yeah, das ist gut. Yeah, das ist gut. I like this. That seemed like Italian almost. But he's Roman influence. For example, the 187-meter long racetrack, hippodrome you could call it, I guess. It's a race course, and no, it wouldn't be a hippodrome because there wasn't horses that raced.
Yeah, I thought it was just a
Just a stadium, yeah.